So we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the September DAP. For the record, this meeting is recorded. I'm Grace Bogdan, I'll be facilitating today's meeting. Before we get to our first item, I did want to mention that, again, for everybody in the room, that Damon's tenure as the development representative on the DAP is coming to an end. And so we are seeking nominations for a developer representative of the Bethesda community. If you know anyone that may be interested in being a panel member, please have them contact me, and I can give you my email. So with that, we have Strathmore Street. This is a sketch plan. The first time it's coming before the DAP. We did send a memo out to the panel last week with a couple comments on furthering their design. And we did get an email this morning from Amanda Farmer, one of the residents in the Bethesda community. I had forwarded it to you. I'm not sure if you were able to see it yet.
Yeah.
But it was a question about the canopy corridors, which she is correct. It's the canopy corridor on both streets. But with that, I will let you guys begin your presentation.
All right, very good. Good morning. It's great to be here again. I think you'll like this building. It's been in the works for quite a bit of time. It sort of got disrupted during 2020. But in the meantime, we became very familiar with this particular site, and we feel that we understand the conditions, and I think we responded to it properly. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the location, but we have a very interesting location at the intersection of Strathmore and Woodmont Avenues. We're very close to the center of Bethesda, the sort of the miracle block that we have in the Bethesda of our retail center. And we're one block in from Wisconsin Avenue, right off of Woodmont. So we're kind of a setback from Wisconsin Avenue. The building has a fairly prominent location on Strathmore, I'm sorry, on Woodmont. Also, it's sort of highlighted by the fact that Woodmont has a nice curvature that sort of curves towards from south to facing east towards Wisconsin Avenue. And due to that condition, the building has a very interesting sort of a potential area where we can express some architectural feature. I think we've done that. Now, you've seen all of these presentations. These presentations are getting longer and longer. We have so many sheets, and I removed some of them. I'm hoping you had a chance to sort of look through it. And I'm going to move quickly through some of the other ones so we can talk about the architecture, circulation, etc. Things that are maybe more critical. You can see the site as I described, right at Woodmont and Strathmore. One block over is Wisconsin, and some of the surrounding buildings. I'm sure everybody here is familiar. The older buildings like the Wellington and the residential building across the street on Strathmore. You may not be familiar with those buildings. They are kind of background buildings, older red brick, probably 1940s, 50s, 2 to 4 story variations. And my guess is over the next 10, 20 years, they will also be replaced. Now, next one, please. I couldn't quite understand why this building is limited at 70 feet, because it always looked to me like it's a mistake. So if you look at it coming down from Wisconsin Avenue, I understand that we're sort of projecting the heights lower to the yellow areas of these single family homes. But if you follow it on Wisconsin, you have 140 plus, most of them are 120 feet. And then you get into the next row along Strathmore and everything is 90. On the other side of Woodmont is 90. On Bradley and Strathmore, it's 90. And we're 70. And across the street is 70. So I'm sure somebody has thought about this, but I thought that it truly was a mistake. We brought this up, but we're not here to argue that. I just wanted to point it out as some kind of a quirk. But next one, please. And we have the canopy corridor, and I think the comment we received this morning that the canopy corridor should be continued on Woodmont. And yes, we will do that. We'll comply with that. There will be more trees, and we have a double row of trees, which I think is wonderful on the street. The setback is about 20 feet, and we have a green strip, sidewalk, and then another green strip. We'll get into it later, but we also have patios where we could have patios on Strathmore, not on Woodmont. Strathmore straddles two streets, Woodmont and Bradley on the other side. And then we have this alley which runs parallel. And again, there are some minor quirks here, and I'll talk about that when we get a little bit more into it. Next one, please. Again, another feature of the site, which I really like actually, is sort of the through block connections in Bethesda that we've done before. And I think it's truly an asset, and it offers opportunities for expressions to sort of entertain and give something to look at for the pedestrian, also a very quick cut through. So we have that here as well. The building on Wisconsin Avenue located that through block right where you see the red dots and the arrow, and we're perfectly aligned with that. It took some challenging things to do that, but I think that was part of sort of development of the building, that we understood how we can manipulate these buildings, this building, to sort of comply with that. That was an earlier comment 3 years ago or something from the staff where we couldn't align it. Anyway, so we overcome that. Next one, please. There's really not much to say about that, but the site is about 29,000 square feet, just 100 square feet short of that. And this is another large building. We have 180 units. It's about 170,000 square feet. Our FAR is 5.89. And every part of the site is either covered with green or with building. And I think we meet all of these requirements and exceed somewhat. Next one, please. Okay, so if you look at the intersection at Woodmont, we understand that people who are living on Strathmore, they really didn't want this thing, the Strathmore, used as a through traffic. So the intersection on Woodmont, as you can see, is that although you can make a right turn and it is legal, it's a little tortured. It's made in that way specifically to discourage the turns. And I think the Woodmont traffic leads you straight into Wisconsin. So we kept that in mind, and we should all keep that in mind. So the traffic is being really diverted from Wisconsin to Bradley, and then making a right on Strathmore. That's one option. So we thought that could become kind of inconvenient and problematic. And we located our service and garage access on the alley, which is kind of a natural thing to do. But at the same time, we would like to be able to have our residents come through Woodmont and make a quick turn and access the garage in a more convenient way. Now, can you go back for a second, please? Anyway, we're also looking for a median cut, probably a difficult ask, but on Woodmont, so that you can come from Wisconsin Avenue and make a left turn. But I think, people will learn this. It's not impossible. It's not difficult, but it just seemed easier to me if you could just make a right turn from Woodmont and get to the front door and get to the alley. So we made the best of the situation. Still, a lot of the traffic is being kept out of Strathmore, but I think via the alley, we can get reasonably convenient and quick access into the garage and the service. Next one, please. And there are a lot of different shape buildings, geometries. I particularly like my friend Sami's buildings at the intersection of Bethesda and Woodmont. And he has a curvature, which I always enjoyed and appreciated. And I think Woodmont also allows us to create some interesting architectural expressions. And in keeping with the circular nature of that sort of the short strip on Woodmont, we also have a very prominent circle right at the focal point as you're coming west on Woodmont towards Wisconsin Avenue. And then the building basically shows you its scale, its order with these intricately woven bay windows and balconies. And then we have a prominent building base. And obviously we have a lot of articulation on both facades on Woodmont and Strathmore. And we felt that the alley side should be more quiet, and it is so for many reasons. And I think that, well, we think that the kind of the residential nature of the building and the fabric that we created and expressing different scales and massing and a step back at the top fits very well into the context. And I think it will set a very nice neighbor to Wellington across the street and probably impact its development when that time comes. Hopefully they will be as sympathetic. Next one, please. So this is the development of the massing and the architectural thought. It jumps around a little bit, but property line and allowable height, 70 feet as measured from Woodmont Avenue. Number 2 shows the allowable building area. Number 3 is the sort of the recommended setbacks, which we're complying with, and we're actually enjoying and using it at the rooftop and using the rooftop pretty intensely. And for sketch 4 identifies our scaling elements, the base, the middle, and the top. Next one, you see the further development of the bay windows, and finally, we arrive at the building. In my view, it's a logical sequence of events, developments. I hope you agree. Next one, please. I think you can sort of appreciate more what we see as you're coming up, how we approach this, where the circle is sort of the envelope from both sides on Woodmont to compare and contrast and thereby highlighting. And it's also really pointing out to where the building entrance is. For obvious reasons, we don't want to have our entrance on Woodmont. It's a very busy street, comparatively speaking, and it's a very short strip that we're fronting Woodmont. So we wanted to be close to that intersection, so it is obvious where you enter the building, but not on Woodmont. But our canopy, we put a sweeping canopy sort of in line, copacetic with the circular element that we have that takes your eye and pulls you towards Strathmore and to the building entrance. And another point of note is the pedestrian through block, which also helped organize this building. Basically, we have a main entrance feature on one side on Woodmont, and then the building is sort of bookended with the pedestrian entrance where we recess the building. I'll talk more about that as we go into it, and then allow the pedestrian element to sort of project out to signal that there is another point of interest here. Next one, please. Yeah, you can see it here. There are a number of reasons. We wanted to highlight the pedestrian cut through the entrance. We've also created a small park sitting area and a green area. We left space for the existing adjacent building, so the windows and they can have light and air. And we further cut the building back on Strathmore to sort of highlight it and really give it some more room. Uh, so we have series of setbacks, which bring some interest. And at the pedestrian level, the building is raised about 2 stories. And then we have a nice canopy plan with a trellis that's coming out with lighting, etc. Next one, please. And you can see really the couple of things to talk about here is that the alley, as I mentioned, the facade here has been kept quiet, and we have recessed balconies to allow some degree of privacy to our residents who are living there. It's a 20-foot alley. We made sure there are no units at the first floor, so everybody is raised up a little bit. Next one, please. Another view looking from Wisconsin. Perhaps the one important thing is that we also have reasonable visibility at the vehicular level and pedestrian level from Wisconsin looking down Woodmont, which we also acknowledged in the architectural treatment of the building. Next one, please. 7-story building, basically, sorry, okay. The first, we have 3 stories of garage below grade. Our parking ratio is about 0.86, 155 spaces total. You can see the building base sort of jutting out, and the building is stepped back slightly. We have balconies and bay windows projecting beyond that, approximately 2 feet beyond the base on the cross section. And then you're seeing the loading dock, loading area, and the alley relationship. And as you can see, the old Parvesian building, which is a wonderful, valuable property, which I'm sure is going to be developed in the near future. Maybe somebody is working on it already. And we're trying to be above that a little bit, again, to sort of allow privacy from the alley to our residents and just more light and air. And the cross section or the transverse section shows you how the ramp operates. There's a higher grade on Woodmont going away towards south, and our garage entrance is about almost midpoint, and the ramp goes down with the slope, and everything else is buried. Obviously, we have no on-site parking other than the street parking that's along Strathmore. Next one, please. First floor, you can see all the gray functions are building back of the house, loading, service, utilities, garage entrance ramp on the alley side, on the east side of the building. On the west side along Strathmore, we wanted to make sure we have these units. It's a wonderful residential street, and we'd like to take advantage of that and keep it that way. And we have patios where we could have it. We also needed additional green, so some of the we don't have some of the patios as you're getting closer to the pedestrian access. But on Woodmont, we have 2 storage spaces. We have our fitness room and a very prominently located lobby. We understand one of the comments is that to move the lobby entrance, the vestibule, closer to Woodmont. I mean, we can debate this back and forth, but we tried in so many locations. I think that street has been activated by the fact that we have a 2-story, expression that is completely transparent, and there are going to be people in there. I personally don't see the difference whether the entrance is on Woodmont or slightly further to the left. That whole facade is activated. Personally, we're happy with the location.
They're also
because, yeah, because it's also close to our lay-by. I mean, it's convenient. We don't want people to get wet. We did our best to bring the canopy all the way from Woodmont to here. So you drop off, you get out of your car, you get quick access to the lobby, to the vestibule. But we can debate that. And the other important part of this is obviously the pedestrian cut through. We paid attention to what's going on Woodmont quite a bit in terms of activating that elevation and the pedestrian level. Next one, please. Second floor, really nothing too major here. All apartment units, with the exception of the lobby and the fitness, the upper level of that and the upper level of the pedestrian cut through. Next one, please. Typical floor, we have combination of studio, small one bedroom dens, and 2-bedroom units. Again, we have 180 units, which we think is a healthy mix. Next one, please. And when we get to the penthouse level, we've used the circle, kind of obvious. We think that's going to be a very exciting interior space. That's also our social rooms, basically the resident amenities. We need some mechanical space, obviously, and the rest is green roof as much as we could fit. Next one, please. That's the level above. Next. First floor of garage level, and then it repeats itself. Really nothing too exciting. I think this is where the excitement is. I'm really happy with this building. I'm hoping you liked it as well. You know, we've shown some degree of maturity here that really addressing issues where they need to be. And I think this is sort of the $1 million or the I guess, inflated version, our $1 billion view here, right, as you're coming, going west on Woodmont. As I mentioned, the circle is a very prominent element, but it's not overbearing. It is enveloped on both sides and really sort of embellished by this wing with the balconies coming out that has a lot of suggestions. And as you can see, the pedestrian level, the 2 stories is all glass. We have ornamental planting, and I'm sure we're going to have another row of trees. And then our vestibule and drop off, very easily locatable and visibly, you know, accessible. And the bay windows, very rhythmic. The setback at the top, our 2-story base is going to be brick. Material-wise, there are a lot of brick. There's a lot of brick being used in this strip of Woodmont Avenue. And we want to continue with that. We have nothing against brick. We have lots of them. And we've used brick here at the base of the building to give it a solidity and also a more of a residential feel. But above that, we plan to use a lighter color, slightly off-white panels, either a synthetic or an aluminum panels. And obviously the balcony edges and the railings. And we want to have a more sort of a brighter building. I think the location deserves that. And I think it will sort of also put us into map. So we're an infill, but at the same time, almost a freestanding building. Next one, please. And the reason this slide is in here is really to highlight the fact that the view that I mentioned, there's a short view corridor looking from Wisconsin Avenue towards our building. And we embellished that with residential elements, color changes, material changes, balconies. And I think it's appropriate for that without making too much of a deal. And you can still see our prominent first 2 stories, balconies and residential units above, kind of a secondary elevation, and we think it should be that way. Next one, please. Pedestrian cut through, not as highlighted as our entry feature in the circle, obviously shouldn't be, but nevertheless, it has warm materials and the building is raised. We have some columns that's holding up that whole element. And as I mentioned, we have a trellis that we will design as kind of a part of our own art program will pay special attention to it. There will be interesting lighting, excuse me, and some interesting material changes. We have some seating area in green between us and the existing building. Next one, please. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for patiently listening. Whatever questions you have or comments, up to here.
What phase are we in here on the review?
Sketch.
Sketch.
Sketch plan.
What is the setback at the southern end to the, that sub?
The pedestrian area,
Yeah, that upper wall.
the
Very
upper
end.
wall.
How far away
Yeah,
is
can
that
you
from
go
the
back to
property?
that? Okay, we can look at it on one of the plans. It's easier to see if you can get me, yeah. The existing
line is the
yes, property line. The existing building to our right is 10 feet. Our current building standing there is very similar to it. Our building, the nearest part is 10 feet. And then we set it back another like 15, 18 feet so that a good portion of the area of that building is like 28 feet, 25 feet, 28 feet, something like that.
The other question I have is, I'm trying to get some clarity first.
Sure.
Before we start talking, I guess. The way the streets are essentially designed in the guidelines. You know, the first floor is essentially, or the base is at the property line or the build-to line, and then you step back. On your first floor, where are you on the first floor in relation to the build-to line?
We are on the build-to line.
So then all of the bays and the balconies.
Project 2 feet out.
Project over that.
2 feet out, but it happens 2 stories above the grade plane.
And it projects out 2 feet.
Correct.
And then I guess the last question is why, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the curb line and all the parking spaces. Why couldn't you just have your lay-by essentially in the parking zone that you're already creating on Strathmore? Why do you have to bring it in even further with the lay-by? I know that transportation people usually.
Yeah, I would caution discussing about the lay-by because that's something that'll be dealt with during regulatory review. And you know that DOT is actually very against lay-bys. It's
Okay.
quite unlikely that.
Yeah, we can talk about it, but it's just to protect people who are coming in. I mean, that's the quick answer to you.
That's all I know.
I think this project's off to a great start. I do have some comments about it though. First comment, the pedestrian walkthrough that connects to the building,
Right.
the GAM. You know, I think it would really help us not being familiar with the plan alignment. If you had like a NOLI plan that basically shows the pedestrian walkthrough as it goes through the gamble, as well as a section through there. And one of my comments is, what's the view corridor look like as you're starting in Wisconsin and looking through? Does the trellis you have kind of interfere with that view through the
From
pedestrian
Wisconsin?
section? Yes.
No, there's a.
Well, I think it would help us to see that.
I would be happy to do that, and I'll do the cross section, but there's a pretty big grade change from Wisconsin.
Oh, I know that. I know.
So you're not really going to be seeing much of anything. I mean, you might have a sense if we lights and stuff up above.
Well, I guess the reason for asking is is your view blocked as you're walking through there? Because you have to realize that this, in my mind, is like the big move. That pedestrian cut through will inform the development that happens on the other side of Strathmore in the future, which you have to realize is going to happen sometime. Definitely going to happen.
On the other side of Strathmore?
Yeah. As you come down the street.
I don't know the building ownerships, how many buildings,
Well, I mean,
et cetera.
But you have to realize it's going to have a huge influence
Right.
on redevelopment of those buildings. Those buildings are
In terms of
development.
its location.
In terms of the gestures that may be made as part of that development is recognizing that pedestrian cross.
I mean, what would you recommend? That
Well,
I'm not sure what,
Yeah.
I measured this morning,
Uh-huh.
right? And so from Woodmont all the way to the alley is about, what, 750 feet or something?
probably, yeah.
So depending on how that's designed and depending on how much it's open, that block will either, in the future, once all that is developed, will either look like something that's a big, solid, 750-foot long wall when you're walking down the street,
Right.
or it will look like at least a couple of building blocks. And I think, so if you're asking what else you could do in, in an extreme case, I would suggest that that should probably be wide open. And then you look like you have your building on one side of that opening and that very public through connection. And then the building on the other side. I mean, that perhaps is a little bit too extreme, but on the other hand, maybe that is a solution. And I think it gets to your point of that really needs to look like it's public rather than private.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think it does look public. I'm sorry, but I think everything should have its due. Front door is the front door, and this is a huge expression at the street level. I respectfully disagree. I think we've created a very prominent cut through in a very small building.
Well, I congratulate you, the fact you're doing it, but I think you have to do it as part of the kind of the Bethesda master plan, right? So it is a requirement. I guess what we're trying to understand is how it actually works, and would like some more information associated with it. It's not to say you're not doing it right, but we'd still like to see more information on
That's
it.
what I wanted to
We'd
clarify,
love to
because I think the
provide
starting
it.
point for the
Yeah.
comment was if we can provide some more information
Correct.
about what it looks like.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
I will do that.
Okay. I think the other comment I would make is about the base along Strathmore Street. The proportion seems a little strange to me, and I think the comment was in the staff memo. And I almost wonder whether there isn't a kind of a simple solution to it, and to really make those two stories feel more like frame elements and downplay the spandrel that you have between the ground floor and the floor above it.
You mean turn it into a more of a two-story expression?
Yeah, exactly right.
One thing that's causing it to look squatty is there's about a 3 to 4 foot grade difference between Woodmont Avenue and the entry point. So that kind of reduces that height,
But I
along
think
with
the comment is
double
more about
space.
middle
the
band.
middle band.
Yeah.
Like this band. Right
You do have a double height space there.
No,
At this end.
I'm talking about going
No.
down Strathmore,
Strathmore.
going down Strathmore, not going over to Woodmont.
Yeah, you really see it in the massing diagrams very
right.
clearly where that horizontal spandrel kind of splits the base into two distinct parts, and the lower part looks very short because of that. But if the piers, like you're saying, Rod, were framing it as a
Right.
two-story base, then that
Help the proportions. Yeah, help the proportions.
Okay. We'll work on that.
And, I debate mentally about, is the lobby in the right place? The staff comment talks about moving the lobby so it's off of Woodmont versus where it is.
You mean the entrance?
The entrance, yeah, the entrance. I mean, I can see it in both ways, to be honest with you. And I think one of the things I noted in the section is the ground floor on Woodmont is a couple feet below Woodmont, right?
Yes, and that's why we have the lobby entrance where
Right.
we have it, is because of the grade difference. We'll be about 3 to 4 feet higher on that side,
Uh-huh.
and we will need a 30-foot ramp to get into our
Right.
building.
And then while we're on that, could you just clarify one thing? So the way that we read it is that there's the entrance on Strathmore Street, and then there's actually the fitness entrance off the alley.
No, we don't have a fitness.
No.
center.
No doors off that,
No, there's a fire exit.
a fire exit, okay.
Again, there's a big grade change there, so it's.
Yeah.
So the portal on the alley is an ornamental portal, that there's a view that
Yes.
looks down there. I mean, I think just for the DAP's sort of reference, the comment about the entrance is tied into the fact that right now it is literally off of the lay-by, which is from a streetscape perspective, the least attractive portion of the frontage. We're just trying to make sure that wherever the entrance is, whether it's on Woodmont or in this location, it has a ceremonial sort of streetscape that is attached directly to it. And I'm sure, as Grace mentioned, our colleagues at DOT are probably not gonna allow this lay-by to exist anyway, so that might go away. The problem might go away, but it might create some other.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad to hear that comment because I was trying to think in my own mind, other buildings have laybys behind them.
For me, my biggest issue is the proportion of where the canopy sits on the facade, on that front most corner. And so it doesn't celebrate this beautiful lace work of mullions in the facade that you have. That's very beautiful, and it just kind of squanders that proportion. It's almost like you want to have two canopies, right? One at the corner where the fitness center is, right? And the main canopy that where your main
Correct.
entry is. It's almost you want to create like hierarchy, which one is more important, which clearly main entry is more important. And moving it up to maybe the next where you have the spandrel, right? So moving it up, to me, that would adjust the proportion, make it look over. And then the other comment is about activation. So you have beautiful landscape in there, but I do agree with staff comments where perhaps seating where people can congregate is more appropriate. There's also Wellington right across from that corner. There's actually a recycling dumpster right where your main entry is kind of located. Now Wellington is probably not going to be there forever, right? But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation.
I agree.
So yeah, that my biggest concern is it looks so low. I understand that the grades higher at Woodmont and Strathmore intersection going down. The grade drops. Yeah, and for the connection, for the connector, right, the guidelines seem to be very clear that it needs to be public. So public meaning open to sky. I know you have, practical concerns there, a number of units, covering that up, but not to beat that comment to death. But yeah, we just want to see how that view sightline, right, aligns with whatever is on the other side, Camille apartments, right? Because they also have a covered area there.
Right.
If those properties have covered area, we kind of actually not following the guidelines, create something else that we don't.
I understand.
Well, and the height of the canopy has an important role to play in that because, you do want to create a human scaled portal, but at the same time, if the grade is going up or down too much, to your point, Roger, the canopy is going to cut off some of the view shed of a pedestrian. So I don't know if there's a way to step the canopy or treat it in a way that
Stop it short.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that. I mean, there has to be special attention paid to that. This is just the germ of an idea, really. Hopefully it will develop into something more intricate.
I think the facades look beautiful. I like them created by the scale proportion of the projecting bays. Again, going back to the guidelines, right? It's we're trying not to have the projections over the build to line. That's why the build to line restriction is there. But we mentioned it's 2 feet. Perhaps 2 feet is not. I mean, they look a little bit further out than 2 feet. But we don't have to mention that.
Can I make a quick comment on the cut through?
Yeah.
I think I totally understand where you guys are coming from and what the master plan is suggesting. I think part of the issue is that this was a compromise because the Camille had already laid out their path. And so if we put our path in the same place with no building above, it really limits the building envelope to a very inefficient property. So I think we're trying to create a compromise, which is why we sort of cut the building back very far from Strathmore and brought it in while trying to keep the alignment, where it's ideal for the pedestrian.
Well, maybe different than some of my colleagues. I don't mind the building over it. I just would want to try to understand the connection between Strathmore up to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It's need more information.
And Rod,
I think, quite frankly, it's probably more powerful to have a bridging element.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you should not have anything up above. That's what
That's what we heard.
Right.
So
But what are we seeing through that, right?
we'd be happy to give you as much information as we get. And we'll take a look. I understand the concern, that frankly, I was a little lost. And I didn't say we're doing it as a favor, but misspoke perhaps. I thought that we were really meeting the requirements, and that aim to the sky was not totally the issue.
Yeah, I mean, suggesting that is an extreme. But I think what I'm seeing in that suggestion, I think it has to be something that reads, not only visually reads all the way through, so you can see it, it's public, but it has to read very public. And I think for reasons, one of them being the internal canopy as it's shown now is essentially a story high. It compresses that space and it makes the space look very semi.
I understand, semi-private.
And I think, so I think having a section through there, I think understanding that whole thing will help a lot, and it might inform how you make it more public.
I understand. The issue that I have, maybe it's a personal thing about this cut through, is that direction leading you to a very okay. So I'm not.
Well, hopefully that alley's going to be a lot nicer someday.
Regardless, it's a service alley, so we're directing people.
Yeah. The new building that's being built right there has units right on that alley.
That's true.
At the ground floor.
Yeah.
And so I think, and the building that's, I guess, to the north, Grace, I'm trying to remember, they're going to have to build part of the cut on their line, right? Cut through that's shown right now off of Wisconsin is going to be double the width someday. Is that true?
Straight.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember. I know there was some discussion about it, but I can't remember what.
I have a vague recollection.
It was sort of like, I think there was about the width back in the day when we were reviewing that project. And I think there was an understanding that once the building to the north came in, it would be expanded. I don't know. I'm just trying to recall. I'm asking.
I'm looking at the drawings and it seems from the drawings that it's wide enough for a 3-block connection, but that doesn't mean that perhaps like the discussion didn't go further as to what some others said.
But anyway, I know that there will be an effort to make this special. And I think you're starting to do it in your design at the base of that alley. I think the new building is doing it in their design that, if that northern lots are finally, I think we're going to be pushing that. So hopefully that someday that alley is going to look actually pretty special. But it's also services. It has to be.
Right.
What would be the treatment of the wall along that whole thing? Do you anticipate you're gonna turn the corner and have windows for that unit there, or there's a corridor that ends there, probably has a secondary emergency exit?
Strand level. I mean, yeah, an emergency exit. It's a very secondary door you wouldn't use. You can make it usable, but I didn't see the reason for the.
I'm just trying to understand, because is it a completely blank wall? Is it
Well,
punctuated?
I-
Art on it?
I was personally looking forward to a blank wall so we can do some interesting brickwork and artwork, etc. I mean, it was sort of a painting piece. Stuff on. Incorporate some art.
To using it as a canvas in the backdrop.
Exactly.
Then along Strathmore, another, so as we would really benefit, that would appreciate to have a section that cut the base of the curve, because it'll show the relationship of the overhanging balconies, patio wall. There are patio walls that lead you to the sidewalk, which are all, I think, recommended things in the sector plan to have residential units have connection to the street.
Wherever we can, we will do that. At some points, the grade may or may not allow. Yes.
I do think that also impact the perception of public to cut through, as if there's a completely sort of walled off frontage along the building, and is less inclined to turn building. You have gates in the patio walls and it feels a little bit more porous, you might feel a lot more comfortable turning.
Damon, did you have any other comments? I heard you try to interject once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna chime in because I remember the pedestrian connection to that building on the north, and if my memory is correct, it was like a staircase kind of opening. So Rod's comment about the view corridor from Wisconsin Avenue down to this, it would be through a staircase. So I don't believe you'd be able to see it. Again, that's if my memory is correct.
Correct.
But high level here, I think this is a fantastic building. I'll remind everyone that we're at sketch plan level. So from like a massing and bulking standpoint, I think this building is designed very well. I think all the comments that you guys are hearing are more kind of detail oriented, and clearly there needs to be a lot of attention on that pedestrian connection and maybe the entrance of the lobby along Woodmont. But those are all things that you guys can continue to address and come back to us with at site plan. So I think, this is a very thoughtful design, and I think you're definitely on the right path here.
Great. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Are there any members of the public on that would like to speak? Okay. So at Sketch, we are essentially taking a straw vote to see if the project's on track, and can come back at site. Based on the discussion here, I see that there is more information wanted for the through block connection, including the section. Did you want to have the applicant team come back now at sketch plan before proceeding to site, or have it as a comment to address at site?
I think for me, I think it's a comment. It's site plan.
At site plan, okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay, then.
Are there power lines on Strathmore on their side?
Yes. Yes.
So how does that impact the trees?
I believe we would be undergrounding.
Well, is
On
that going to
Strathmore.
happen? Because if it is this canopy corridor, at least in my opinion, that's the biggest problem.
All the projects in Bethesda downtown have been undergrounding utilities. And I believe there's also utilities in the alley, correct, which will be undergrounded. So I think that's all.
That will help. So as dense as possible, making those trees big ones.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you all very much. Get these notes available.
Yeah,
to you.
thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you all.